How's it going, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Strictly Nintendo podcast. This is going to be a little bit something different. I wanted to do a podcast specifically focusing on the motion controls, or, well, overall, the controls for Star Fox Zero. This seems to be a controversial topic. I know that there's going to be people who just outright don't like them, and that's fine. That's your opinion. You're entitled to it. This video is not for you. This video is going to be for those who enjoy Star Fox and want a better experience and may be having trouble acclimating to the controls, or they just picked it up and they want a little bit of a heads up. So I'm going to share some of the tips and tricks and mindsets that I utilized to really get comfortable with the controls, and hopefully this will help some of you. Now, I'm not a master of this game, so I'm not sitting here, 360 no scope, on fleek, super elite, all right? I'm not going to show you 5 seconds of gameplay and drop the mic, all right? I'm not like a badass here. This is just me sharing the tips and tricks that I used that made me more comfortable with the controls and yielded better results, because if you utilize the controls properly, you're going to have a better experience with this game. And for those of you who invested in this game and want to enjoy it, if I can be part of that, if I can give you a little bit of information that might help get you more comfortable with the controls so that you have a better experience, then this podcast has done its job. Now, for the most part, if you've played Splatoon, you're going to know somewhat what to expect. However, the motion controls are a lot more sensitive than in Splatoon, and unfortunately, there is not a sensitivity adjustment slider. I really wish there was. I truly do. I think that's one place that Nintendo did drop the ball, and hopefully maybe they'll implement that in an update. I doubt it, but it would have been nice, because sometimes the precision aiming motion control aspect of this game can be a little bit too sensitive, in my opinion. But nonetheless, let's get to the tips and tricks. Now, first and foremost, you want to make this as efficient as possible. So when it comes to somersaults, just use the X button. The target locking function really only helped me when I was in a dogfight in all range mode, like in the third mission when you're battling Pigma. So I'd really honestly say, honestly, don't worry about that too much. Because honestly, the ZR trigger is much more important. That's what you fire your lasers with, and of course, you want to get the little laser upgrades throughout the courses, because obviously, the more powerful the laser are, the quicker you're going to take out enemies. The faster you take out enemies, the better score you're going to get. It's also your laser charge, so you hold it down. When it charges up, you lock onto an enemy, and you take them out in one shot. And you're going to want to utilize that quite a bit, especially when you're dealing with clusters of enemies, because if you have 4 enemy ships within close proximity and you lock on one and hit them at the right time, you can take out the other 3, and that just makes life a whole lot easier, plus gives you a better score. Of course, when you're in all range mode, you may have to pull a U-turn, so that's what your B button's for. You're going to probably use somersault a little bit more, but like I said, just don't worry about using the analog sticks for somersault. X and B if you need to make a somersault for X, or a U-turn, do that with B. Now, as far as aiming goes, for the most part, the classic spray and pray kind of approach really works for most levels and most applications in levels, because as I said, doing the laser charge up, locking onto a target when there's a cluster of enemies and taking them out faster, that's going to be something that you're going to utilize more often than having to worry about the precision aiming. Now, obviously, with the precision aiming, you need to hold up the gamepad. All right, it's not heavy, so don't sit there and use that as an excuse, all right? It's just like the rear view mirror of a car. When you're looking in your rear view mirror for that split second to check your 6, you still see the road in front of you. It's still within your peripheral line of sight. So you want to utilize that same approach with the gamepad. You want to hold it up so that it's right below the screen, so that when you look down real quick, because you're not going to spend a whole lot of time. That's one of the things that I think people may be doing wrong, is when you go into precision aiming and you're looking at the heads-up display on the gamepad, you're not supposed to be all of a sudden paying attention to that screen for, next few minutes. You're really only going to need it for a couple seconds at most. So holding up the gamepad is going to keep the TV in your line of sight, and it's going to make things a lot easier to process and look out for buildings or other obstacles that may be coming your way. Now, another key factor beyond that is that to utilize the motion controls, you are going to need to learn that the Y button is your best friend. It re-centers your reticle. Okay? So after every significant engagement with enemies, hit the Y. Make it muscle memory. You should be hitting Y every 15 seconds, easy. It has to be part of your muscle memory. Get used to hitting Y. All right? Because you're going to have a tendency to, you pull a barrel roll or you dive under or go over an obstacle or move to the left or right around an obstacle or something of that nature. You're going to have a tendency to turn the gamepad. All right? It's just how we react. Our bodies move with the motion of the screen. So once you get resettled, immediately hit Y. Immediately recenter your reticles. All right? Make it muscle memory. And probably the next best thing that you can do, besides constantly using the Y button to recenter your reticles, is learn where the select button is. Trust me. The select button switches screens. Normally, third person is on your TV and cockpit mode is on your gamepad screen. You hit select and that switches. And your cockpit view is on the TV while the third person is on the gamepad. Now imagine how much easier it is to utilize the motion control aiming, the precision aiming feature, when you're still staring at your TV. So learn how to use that select button to switch between the screens often when you need it. That alone can make you feel more comfortable with the motion controls because all of a sudden it's a whole lot more like Splatoon. And that's really it. It's honestly that simple. The motion controls are just a tool that you have to utilize, much like the walker, which can be a huge benefit, or how the Landmaster can hover and fly. I mean, if you use these tools of the walker and the Landmaster's hovering and flying capabilities, it can make boss battles and a lot of aspect of the gameplay a lot easier. And it's the same with the motion controls. Rely on X for your somersaults, don't complicate things. Always use the Y to recenter your reticles. Hold the gamepad up so when you're looking down on it, your TV is still in your line of sight, and or use the select button to switch the screens. This will make life a lot easier and you're going to get more out of the game. I mean, let's face it, not everybody is going to instantly pick up this game and be acclimated to the controls. I wasn't, it took time. Do you pick up a guitar for the very first time and all of a sudden play like Steve Vai? Of course not. Practice makes perfect. You have to learn the skills and you have to utilize them properly. And guess what? There's a training mode. We all know this. If you own the game, you know there's a training mode. For those who haven't bought the game yet, there's a training mode. Use it. Use it regularly. Now, the gyro wing's not very complicated. I wouldn't worry about training on those. But there is the Landmaster and there is the Walker/R-Wing mode because you do utilize the R-Wing in the Walker training. Play the training over and over. Don't be afraid to do so. I mean, I remember the first time I did the Walker training, I may have gotten 60 coins out of 100, and now I can easily get nearly 160 coins. So utilize the training. It's there to help you. And if you utilize these tips and tricks that I shared with you during the training mode, in training, you don't have enemies shooting at you. You don't have the intensity of battle. So you can really get a good feel and become more comfortable with the controls. And when you're more comfortable with the controls, it's a lot easier to let the intensity of the game not overwhelm you. Also, go back and play the first two levels. The first two levels are easy. And because they're so easy, it's very much like just, live fire training courses, so to speak, I honestly wouldn't be surprised that if, someone who hasn't played this game before utilized these tips and tricks that I've shared here during the training missions, and you played the training missions a few times, 2-3 times, and you've got to the point where you feel comfortable with them, where you're easily getting over 100 coins in the Walker training and well over 50 in the Landmaster training. I wouldn't be surprised if a first-time player utilized the Falco amiibo to unlock the Black R-Wing, which of course is more powerful, but takes more damage, and first time someone could play through the very first level at Corneria and beat it with ease. But seriously, play the training missions a few times. Go back and play them regularly. Utilize these tips and tricks. Go back and play the first Corneria mission. Go back and play the second mission and utilize these and get more comfortable. And as you progress through the game and the missions get a little bit harder and harder and the bosses get a little bit more creative or a little bit more of a challenge, you're not going to be as overwhelmed and you're going to get more out of this game. I honestly believe that these tips and tricks will help to the point where if you utilize them properly, you should be able to play the first mission, Corneria, and you should beat the boss within 30 seconds easy. I mean, it should be a cakewalk. You should be able to take out the top 2 radars in the first flyby, and then pull a U-turn and take out the bottom 2 radars and beat that boss in 2 flybys. So I hope you find these tips and tricks to be of benefit to you and helps you, get more comfortable in properly utilizing these motion controls. And that helps bring a higher quality experience with Star Fox Zero. And that'll do it for this episode of the Strictly Nintendo podcast. Until the next one, take care.